Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our sixth and final installment in our concept lesson here of the mechanisms of evolution. Here we're going to be going through the practice problems, the practice problem set. So you got a few questions here to look at, just hopefully giving you a little bit more practice as we work through the 5 mechanisms here. So we'll be going through each of those in turn. So this first question that we got here, let's just start by looking at the question. What's our example? We got European rabbits, going on 175 years ago in Australia. So what's going on? There's too many of them, so we actually give them a virus about 100 years later, and it's deadly to them. It seems to be working at first, but then the rabbits are actually doing okay. Their death rate is decreasing. They're actually dying less. So how can we explain this, right? That's the question down here, right? How do we actually explain this? So let's think back to our 5 mechanisms of evolution. We have natural selection, sexual selection, gene flow, genetic drift, and mutations. Let's try to pick at least one that we think would really be operating here and kind of go from there before we get to the questions. So natural selection, definitely, right? There's some kind of predatory relationship between not exactly predatory, but rabbits and virus. The virus is getting less effective over time. There seems to be some kind of adaptation at play here. This doesn't have to do with reproduction, really. Sexual selection is out. Gene flow, we're not looking at the rabbits moving around too much. Genetic drift, maybe this could be a bottlenecking event. It doesn't seem totally random, though, right? Why isn't it random? Because here's at least a trend, right, that we're analyzing that the death rate decreased over time. So maybe not totally random. Genetic drift, we'll keep that in back of our minds. Mutations, sure, there could be mutations always operating. That one's kind of very hard to avoid altogether. So maybe let's start leaning with some kind of combination of natural selection and mutations. So who are we selecting for? We're going to be looking for rabbits that the virus can't kill, right? Those are the rabbits being selected for. What rabbits are being selected against? Well, those are the ones dying from the virus. So what's our question? Which of the following answer options best explains this? So let's start going through them, looking for anything with like natural selection and mutations. So A, rabbits avoid being infected. Okay, humans can't even always figure that out, so rabbits definitely aren't pulling it off. B, the lifespan of the virus is too short. Again, that's a little ambiguous. We have no information from the question to tell us that. C, rabbits are immune to the virus, or selected for. Okay, yeah. Whereas rabbits that were not immune to the virus were selected against. I like that, but before we commit to it, let's look at D. Natural selection chose rabbit fitness over viral fitness. Meaning natural selection is only selecting for rabbits and selecting against viruses. That's not quite how natural selection works. So let's choose C. Went through each one. Let's choose C there. It's our first practice problem. Going on to the second practice problem. Focusing in on sexual selection down here. I'll bring it up to the top. So what do we have? Peacocks. We use those as an example in our second lesson video. So here they are again. Peacocks, those big tails, right? They put them on display to attract the peahens. So big, colorful, decorative, very exaggerated. The bigger the tails, essentially, in the males, the more they get to mate, right? The peahens will choose them. They get to mate. So what's our question? How's this? This is sexual selection. This is non-random mating. And how is that influencing peacock evolution? So before looking at the questions, what do we expect? We expect to see that over time, females choosing the biggest, brightest tails, that will just continue, right? We're selecting for those alleles that will continue. Those are being selected for. Selected against are the peacocks with smaller tails, right? Smaller tail feathers. So let's see what we got here. Peafowl don't choose their mates. Well, nope, just going to move right past A. B, peafowl mating seems to be random. Definitely not B, definitely not random. So C, in the future, okay, we expect tail feathers to become smaller. Doesn't seem to be the case based on what we've observed so far. So D, in the future, we expect peacock tail feathers to become even more ornate. Ornate meaning like decorated, right? That seems to be that lights up immediately. That's a good option there. So that's practice problem number 2. Next one on gene flow, or seems to be gene flow. So let's look at the question. Bald eagles flying around, right? So a lot of times they're hatched in Florida. We track them. We put bands on their ankles, and then the nestlings, they fly out, right? They're able to fly. They can move we've tracked them more than 1,000 miles away from Florida, like way up in Maine, almost going into Canada, right, in a single summer. So they're joining new populations of bald eagles, right? They're leaving one, they're emigrating from one and immigrating into another, right? So even if we didn't know that this was about gene flow, hopefully that's becoming very obvious, right? We're really not talking about mating or natural selection. This doesn't seem to be random, totally random, at least in terms of genetic drift or mutations. Seems like gene flow is occurring. What kind of effect is this going to have on bald eagle population as a whole? So let's look at A. Due to immigration and emigration from different gene pools, they'll evolve accordingly. Okay, that's a fair statement, but let's keep going. B, gene flow cannot occur within a single species. No, get out of here with that one. C, gene flow and therefore evolution can occur within the bald eagle species, but not within a single country. Well, bald eagles don't acknowledge country lines and borders, so that doesn't seem to make sense. And D, bald eagles don't evolve since they always look the same on U.S. currency. Well, that's just baloney. So, you know what? Let's go with A. A seems to be the best one here, based on what exactly is occurring, whether it's immigration or emigration, and which gene pool. We're going to see increasing diversity if we're immigrating in, decreasing diversity if we're emigrating out. So that's covered by respective populations evolving accordingly. It's practice problem number 3. Practice problem number 4. Very interesting case here. So let's start with the question. So Ellis Van Creveld syndrome. If you'd like to see pictures of that, feel free to Google it. It's definitely recognizable, right? But it tends to occur most commonly within the Amish population, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. More so than it does in the general human population all over Earth. How and why? Let's take a closer look at this. Originally, the Lancaster Amish population was settled by about 200 immigrants, right? Kind of forming a new gene pool here, right? So this should start screaming founder effect, right? We have about 200 individuals going to make a new colony or a new population. And in that small population, in that small gene pool, there was someone carrying the EVC, Ellis Van Creveld syndrome allele. So what's our question? What is at work here? Which effect? We're already thinking founder effect. But how do we know? Right, so bottleneck effect, nothing randomly catastrophic is happening here. We're really just seeing some movement, going to go make a new gene pool. It's not gene flow, right? We're going to go make a new one. And so, yeah, let's see what C and D have for that, right? So I'm immediately going to rule out A and B. They're both about the bottleneck effect. Hopefully it's pretty obvious why that's not occurring here. So let's look at C for the founder effect. Amish population was found with a relatively small gene pool, so the EVC allele had a more significant frequency. Okay, let's look at D. Did the Amish found their population on the premise of carrying this syndrome? Doesn't seem like it. It doesn't seem like that was a factor in why they went to go colonize separately. It just seems like some of them happen to carry this allele, and because it's a smaller population, it becomes more prevalent, right? It tends to have a higher frequency. So let's go with C. That seems to be the best explanation for why we see it in higher frequencies in the smaller population in the Amish colony here with the EVC syndrome. It seems to be a genetic drift happening under the founder effect. It seems to be pretty random, and that's why we see that change in the gene pool. So one more practice problem left, and it is about mutations. So this question, right, just setting up a bit of a premise here. Mutations are not goal-directed. Mutations can be spontaneous, right? It's that random from a variety of causes. What's our question? How do mutations act as an evolutionary mechanism? And how can they be used to explain the co-evolution, or a quote-unquote arms race, between humans and antibiotic-resistant bacteria? So what's the idea here, right? So we have these bacteria we're trying to hit with antibiotics. And antibiotics, right, designed to kill bacteria, But randomly, due to random chance, some bacteria will have mutations either pre-existing or, during the exposure to antibiotics that allow them to survive. So we didn't kill all of them. So now the bacteria that are left are going to they survive, they're going to reproduce. And now they're infecting us again, right? We're like, humans, man, we got to come up with a new antibiotic that can now kill the bacteria. So we'll try the second one, and again, due to mutations, it'll kill off most of them, but not all. So now you have these bacteria now reproducing and evolving that are now resistant to 2 antibiotics. And now we as humans get sick, got to create another antibiotic, and this just goes on and on. So let's see what answer options work best here. So A, when humans take antibiotics, they become more evolutionary fit. And the bacteria that die from antibiotics are less evolutionary fit. Okay, seems like a little bit of a weird use of fitness in this case, evolutionary fitness. So let's keep going. Don't want to commit to this yet. This is not sending off alarms yet. So B, when bacteria recognize the presence, they can spontaneously and willfully mutate resistance. As far as our understanding goes, that's not how mutations occur. So probably going to rule out B. A is still on the table, though. Let's go to C. When you get a bacterial infection, you get into an arms race, trying to see who can develop weapons first. No, that's taking arms race too literally here in C. So far, A is still our best bet, but let's look at D. When humans use antibiotics against bacteria, all bacteria are killed, except for the ones that are randomly mutants and being resistant. Okay. Requiring humans to respond to more antibiotics, etc. I like D more than A in this case, because fitness is not necessarily something you can just become, right? Especially in humans taking a pill, and bacteria, right? It is just randomly being resistant to antibiotics. Could we say that's fitness? Yes, I guess if we're describing a human taking antibiotics as part of the environment, that gets a little gray. I definitely think D is a better answer option here. So we're going to go with that. So those are our practice problems. That's our practice problem set. Hopefully that helps. Some very solid exam-like questions to get some more practice in on how to address and apply and use these 5 evolutionary mechanisms. Good luck.